in various fields and showcasing Nepali art and culture to the world. In today's age, the countries that are able to tell good stories are able to make deeper connections and stronger relations. This session will talk about the value of soft powers and how we should pursue to showcase Nepal before the world audience. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our panelists for this session. Mrs. Deepa Chipalu Joshi, co-CEO of Incessant. I'd like to invite you on stage. Can I also have Mahima Shrestha, Head of PR and Media, MOP Communication. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause maybe. That'll give us a bit more energy to all our panelists joining us on stage. Sangeeta Thapa, Founder and Director, Siddharth Art Gallery. Could I also invite Mr. Upendra Mahato, Philanthropist and International Entrepreneur on stage to complete this panel that would be discussing about unleashing Nepal's soft power. And now, to bring all of our panelists together and get this discussion forward, can we please put our hands together for our moderator, Amish Mulmi, columnist at the Kathmandu Post. Big bright smile from our moderator. He seems very ready and prepared to take this conversation forward. That good energy to get this session going. May I please hand over this session to now our moderator, Mr. Mulmi.
Thank you. Thank you, Sadiksha. Thank you, Kantipur, for holding this. My pleasure being here for the second time now. So far, this is the last session, so obviously we'll just keep it quick. We'll keep it conversational. Buzzword so far through the day has been economic connectivity. And as Professor Menon mentioned in the morning, South Asia is one of the least economically integrated regions. But one could also argue that in terms of cultural connectivity, we are perhaps one of the most integrated places or regions in the world as well. And along with this, Nepal itself, as an official foreign policy or in its foreign policy document, it has argued that soft power will form a major pillar of its policy from here on. Of course, why not? We have an artistic heritage that dates back millennia. We have an unmatched cultural diversity from the Himalaya to the plains. We have the history, we have the heritage that has shaped a unique legacy. But what are the paradigms that we must explore to understand Nepal's soft power potential? What are the stories that we can tell? How do we define these parameters of Nepali soft power? And how do we make Nepal relate to a global audience in a way that defies convention and appeals to the contemporary era? As a storyteller myself, I'm hoping to learn much from a stellar panel here today. So without much ado, what I'm going to do is, one round, we'll just introduce, the panelists will introduce their work in a very short, let's say a brief session, then we'll go on to the questions before we take questions from the audience. So as everyone knows, you can post questions on the app, so we're looking forward to some questions here. So I'd like to start, Deepa ji, if you can just pass the mic along and introduce yourselves.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm Deepa Joshi. I'm co-CEO of Incessant Studios. What's happening as far as the studio is concerned, we are literally at a stage of transformation. We have been a service provider for the last 14 years. But at this point, the world has changed. The way we consume entertainment has changed. And there's this huge demand for regional stories told authentically by the people of the region. We will not have another movie where Matt Damon plays a Chinese guy. Let's just put it that way. So, Incessant Rain Studios is creating its own IP. However, that effort is a little bit different than being a pure service provider. So I became active operationally in a leadership role at Incessant Rain Studios since about November last year. And my job right now is to make sure that the admin part of the company is set up so that we can take our stories to the world. We can utilize and leverage our soft power. And in order to do that, apart from the admin, the boring stuff, right? Marketing, finance, the plumbing of the company, I'm also focused on making sure that we have the kind of human capital that we need, basically highly trained technical visual artists, animators, Python developers, and so on, and filmmakers. So stay tuned for some announcements on training programs that will be coming up. We plan on launching some plans, talking about the new direction about end of this month. So that's all I can say right now without getting kicked out of the stage. Thank you so much.
Mahima.
Namaste, I'm Mahima Shrestha. I am Communications Director for the Lumbini Museum. Now, as many of you might know, there has already been a historical museum in the Sacred Garden area of Lumbini. And we are now trying to create a new identity and a new museum in that space that forms an anchor experience in Lumbini. Some of you might know that our data currently shows that most people who come to Lumbini, the almost 2 million people who come, they spend less than an hour in Lumbini. Sometimes it's closer to 30 minutes. And so we hope to change that. And in doing so, we hope to change the way we tell stories about Nepal and about ourselves to the world. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to introduce myself with the work that I have done with the Siddhartha Art Gallery, which was established in 1987. I've curated about 600 exhibitions, but in between what I began to feel is that despite the constant flow of exhibitions that I was organizing, Nepal was somehow getting left out of the global discourse. So I set up the Siddhartha Art Foundation, which is a non-profit organization. And through that, we have been organizing something called the Kathmandu Triennale. We had the 4th edition in March of this year. Of course, the pandemic pushed it 2 years later. But you know, when people talk about South Asia, I'm very proud to be South Asian. Nepal is always left out of the discourse. We talk about Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. These are Commonwealth countries. But you know, the water from the Himalayas has nurtured the civilizations downstream. But we are left out of the discourse. So I think the main vision behind establishing the Triennale was to grow our own agency and to establish ourselves as a viable international art hub. And I would like to share that for this Triennale, we had artists from 41 countries, over 100 artists spread out in 5 historical venues. And it was the largest exhibition to open post the pandemic.
My name is Upendra Mahato. My dream is to make our passport. Please welcome from Please Wait.
Thank you, Upendraji. I think that is more than adequate for your introduction. So I would like to begin directly from you itself. So how do we outline Nepali soft power in this age of digital connectivity and dissolving borders? And being so associated with the NRN movement yourself, how can we take advantage of this Nepali diaspora in expanding our soft power?
To talk about soft power, we should find what is the hard power. Hard power is influencing power in economics, weapons, and international politics. So because of that, this hard power, G7, G20, and G150, 200 are down. So every country, to get this hard power, should go through soft power. So Nepal's soft power is the highest concentration in the world of spirituality and nature, which is God-gifted. It cannot be created. It cannot be bought. There is no any amount of billions, trillions of dollars cannot make this. So we should explore this in international market. And every country which has their own unique soft power. If we can find that soft power and we can sell in the international market, we can be one of the largest hard power. So as looking different countries of the world, many of you have already traveled those countries. Because of NRN movement, I have chance to see many countries, to work there, to see the possibility. I think in very near future, there will be G1, G7, G20, and G200. So G1 will be Nepal. Why G1 will be Nepal? I already told. The concentration, concentrate like Coca-Cola. All over the world, water is used locally. Only the concentration is coming from somewhere. And we all are drinking. So that power, spirituality and nature, that concentration we should find out and to sell. So, and the main is called, the concentration called sanskar. That sanskar we have. We don't use this sanskar in the international market for the economic development. But I am very scared one thing in Nepal, because we have very many unique things like our calendar, our shape of the flag, moon is higher than sun. So our color of passport was green, now became, I don't know which color became. So we should not lose our uniqueness. That uniqueness, I am scared that because of all this internationally, globally, globalization, all these things, we can lose our uniqueness. That uniqueness, if we lose, then soft power will not work. And we will be always behind other countries.
Thank you, Upendraji. I agree. I think in terms of, as I said, in terms of cultural heritage, we have a lot that we can leverage on. And I want to move on to you, Deepa. We know that Incessant Rain has successfully worked with global film studios. The studio has also recently signed a deal with the Hollywood production house Electric Brain. So how do you see yourself leveraging our soft power, as Upendraji said? What aspects of Nepal's heritage do you think you will build upon?
I think we're in a really unique position right now with the change in demand and acceptance of regional stories. We have many Nepali-centric brands. Himalayas, that's a global brand. The Yeti, that's a global brand. Garude, that's a global brand. Kali. So these stories come from our culture, our heritage, our mythologies, our experiences. We have people with stories of great experiences. So what we are doing as storytellers, the portfolio could be feature movies, animated movies, live action movies, shorts, documentaries, and so on. But at the center of it all is these stories from the region. Now, the challenge, Amish, is how do we translate this for the global market? We don't make a $50,000 movie. We make $15, $20, $30 million movies. So for that, we don't have a vibrant equities market or capital market over here. So we got to get the money from outside, right? So that's the challenge. Then we got to be able to package it. So I always say this, and if Kiran Joshi heard it, his nose would grow big, right? If it was not for him, the company would not really exist. It's just sheer tenacity. But for us to go forward, we need to have this connective tissue with Hollywood. Our stories, Amish, they are written by script writers and writers in Hollywood. We bring Hollywood actors. One of our advisors used to be the president of the Golden Globes. We have instructors that'll come, known Academy-nominated and Academy-winning personalities that'll come and do classes. So we need all of these pieces to come together. And fortunately, we're able to do that. So I'm really excited and optimistic about where we're going. However, I would like to really stress that We are the only company in Nepal that does what we do. So it is still very nascent. And so we are misunderstood and not understood. And so that creates lots of barriers and obstacles in many, many ways. And that's a challenge.
I think that's one of the things about cultural transmission as well. Like, as much as what we send outside, I think we would also like to receive from the outside as well to absorb what let's say, the larger world is doing. And I think recently, as Sangeeta ji said, the Kathmandu Triennale really did that. If you miss visiting it, it created this new artistic sensibility for the global south based on a post-colonial approach and its emphasis on indigenous cultures, not just in Nepal, but of the entire world. So, Sangeeta ji, I would like to ask you, what would it take for Nepal to become this successful artistic center? And can we build on this artistic heritage of ours, become one not just in South Asia, but perhaps the world?
It's been a long journey. Kathmandu Triennale is now a recognized event globally. I just like to reflect and say, a country's politics is shaped by its geography. And in that aspect, country's art is also shaped by its geography. And Nepal is in a very unique position in that we are next to India and China. And the other thing is we are a neutral country. So artists from Pakistan can come to Nepal and exhibit. And South Asian artists have the mobility in Nepal that they might not have in other countries. So I think in that respect, we are a neutral ground. So we are politically, climatically, and culturally positioned to really grow our cultural currency and establish ourselves as a global brand. But the challenges I see is I go to the Venice Biennale, the Kochi Biennale in particular. It is called the People's Biennale. And earlier on, I heard someone talking about Buimanche, So we somehow haven't been able to grow that community, from the rickshaw driver to the taxi driver to the person at the airport or to the whole art infrastructure. Everybody is talking about the Kochi Biennale. And it's still a long way for the Kathmandu Triennale to get there, but we will one day.
I would also argue that, this year's Triennale was a successful event in many, many ways in doing that, right? So, do you, just to build on what you're saying, do you think that there is a larger push that is required on behalf of policy making, or do you think that this artistic center can emerge on its own?
Someone just said a weak state has no diplomacy. A weak state also, every time I visited the ministry, the Secretary of Culture had changed. So, it was like musical chairs, in the course of talking to the government. This was the first Triennale where the government participated, and they gave us a contribution. Now, that also, it took so many years for us to receive that. But we were able to, with this Triennale, like you mentioned, we had funding for research. Our curators were able to go as far as Karnali, Pokhara, Janakpur, and what they put together, the whole Triennale team, the curators, we have reached where we are because of the team effort. But we need more commitment from the government.
Mahima, I want to move on to you. And you've been associated with the Lumbini Museum, which is the most exciting project that seeks to revive both Lumbini and Nepal's Buddhist history. And if you haven't heard about it, I would definitely recommend checking it out. I'd like you to tell us what its vision was or is, and how does it build on our cultural and religious heritage, right? And how are you intending to, beyond, let's say, driving visitors to Lumbini, how are you seeking to build upon the vision of, let's say, the Japanese architect who had this master plan for Lumbini?
Well, first of all, so unlike most museums in the world, when people build museums, often the biggest question is how do we get people to come? And for us in Lumbini, that's a smaller problem because people already come. We have a storytelling problem in Lumbini, and we have an information and education gap. in the way we communicate the history of Lumbini. So the museum, the creation of a museum, is as much a storytelling project as it is a project about creating a physical space that we call the Lumbini Museum. For us, we see, you know, I always recount this experience of going to Giverny in France, which is home of the Impressionist painter Monet. Now, he's a wonderful painter, and still, he's not equivalent to what we're talking about in Lumbini. But from the time you get on the train in Paris to go to Giverny, everything reminds you that you are going to the hometown of this exceptional, very significant person that once lived there. Now, everything from signage on trains to when you arrive, everything reminds you of that. Whereas people can come to Lumbini, leave 25 minutes later, unimpacted by the significance of that place. And so for us as a museum, that is a significant concern. We want to change that, but to change that, we have to commit not only to telling a new story about Lumbini, but also committing to visitor experience in Lumbini. We have to change how we communicate the history of Lumbini in Lumbini. So these are two parallel issues, the challenge of education and storytelling, and the challenge of the actual physical museum space. So those are the two areas that the museum is working towards at the moment.
And then how, beyond working on these two visions, say, how is it that the museum is building on this idea of, let's say, Nepal's Buddhist soft power, or how are we taking it outside?
So you mentioned the master plan earlier, right? And as far back as the 1970s, visitors to Lumbini, specifically Uthan, who was then UN Secretary General, and Kenzo Thange, they were so moved by the beauty and the heritage and significance of Lumbini that they could see that it had the potential to become a major spiritual, cultural center in the world. So this is a project that really, it aligns itself with that original history and vision and seeks to bring it to life in a new way that captures the modern imagination.
Thank you, Mahima. I suppose the key part of soft power or defining Nepali soft power is the act of telling stories, be it brands, be it, let's say, not just in terms of like products, in terms of like services, anything. So, Upendraji, I want to go to you and I want to ask you, how can Nepali brands and products tell a successful story? And we have had several successful Nepali global brands recently. We've had 14 Peaks documentary, we've had Gold Star, we've had YY. So what have these brands done to appeal to a global consumer and audience?
For that, first of all, we have NRN diaspora. And it is like, if we have good seeds, like watermelon, we cannot put in where rice can grow. Where sandy soil, there watermelon. Where is the fertile soil, there will go for the rice. So the same thing, first of all, we should see our patriotic feelings by using the Nepali products. And that is in Nepali diaspora, NRN diaspora. So this is a very, very huge market for Nepali products. But for that Nepali products, Nepal should get the benefit. Because if this branding, the earning of this branding is coming to Nepal, then Nepalese will happily use that products. So, and NRN diaspora today, any culture, Nepali books, Nepali films, Nepali songs, we are using very, very broadly now. And another thing I just want to say, for the soft power, which I have already told, this our sanskar, Atithi Devo Bhava, in Nepali heard, this is not in the book, in Nepali heard. All over the world, if the people is very enjoying when they are getting service from others. Only Nepali community in the world who always enjoy when they are serving to others. So this service sector for Nepal is the main soft power. Tourism, health, education, and for the money, we have seen FDI, domestic investment. We should explore the possibility of the domestic investment, because FDI is somewhere any problem, this coronavirus or now the war in Russia, Ukraine, all these things you can see FDI is flying like faster than rocket. So domestic investment should be protected, should be as much as possible. In Nepal, I think maximum, we heard Kulman saying, maximum 10 years, we will not know where to put the money. We will have the huge amount of the money. So please, we should be concentrate in our soft power to make Nepal as a G1.
Thank you. I agree. I am a lot of, I suppose, hydropower obviously has brought about a lot of dreams, right? And I think that's also part of the whole story, the larger Nepali story in the 21st century, about creating this legacy built on, let's say, our existing heritage. And this is a question that I have always wondered about since the release of 14 Peaks, and I have the right panelists here to answer that. OTT platforms such as Netflix, etc., they have been extremely successful in bringing out regional stories from different cultures, and which have in turn created a soft power legacy of their own. And 14 Peaks has done that to an extent for Nepal. So how do you see this medium translating into, let's say, diffusing our own soft power heritage on, let's say, these platforms? And how do we, let's say, if we have to take a Nepali story beyond to a global audience through platforms, how should we go about that?
These are distribution methods of entertainment. We used to have buggies and rickshaws, and now we have cars and planes. So it's just a different medium. I think fundamentally, fundamentally, you're looking at what is your product like and who's buying it. And for us to make a good product, we need investments, talent, and a distribution network that we can tap into. It doesn't matter how many Netflix or Apple Plus or Paramount Plus exist, Disney Plus. There's going to be others, no doubt. But for Incessant Rain, as an entertainment company, our biggest challenge is still developing our human capital in such a way that we can create these stories. Because it's no use if we bring a bunch of people from Hollywood to make these stories, right? So I'm just really focused, laser focused on training our people and making sure we have a company that the global investors and global entertainment audience demographic gravitates towards. And that's a whole different thing. So, you know, it's all interrelated little pieces that have to come. And you mentioned, by the way, 14 Peaks. It's an anomaly. It's not a harbinger of what's to come. If you look at the ins and outs of how that product came to the market, it's unique. But that's not the standard bearer of what's happening right now. And we really need more concerted efforts. You asked earlier about policies. Can't do it without a friendlier policy environment.
So in terms of, let's say, friendlier policy environment, what are you, let's say, particularly looking for?
It's multifaceted, but if I can just summarize it, our processes are Byzantine. I call it a jalebi system. You know, you keep going round and round and round, and it's really hard to get things done. Apart from that, obviously, we have a very non-formed capital markets. We are pretty much a hermit country, in my humble opinion. It's debatable. But there are many pieces that need to come together. And as only one company that's trying to do this, it's going to be an interesting story. And I look forward to sharing it with the country.
I think in what you've identified, I think we've had a similar experience in art as well, in contemporary art. The Nepali artist Sharon Sherpa is now exhibiting at prestigious centers such as the Virginia Museum for Fine Arts and the Venice Biennale. So Sangeeta ji, I think it's a similar question to you as well. Is the time now ripe for a unique Nepali artistic sensibility to take on the world? And how can contemporary art forms from Nepal build this Nepali perspective and contribute to our soft power?
First of all, I would like to say when international museums look at Nepali art, we're always thinking of the religious art. But I think the Kathmandu Triennale and the Venice Biennale, where this was Nepal's very first participation in Venice, which is, I mean, to explain the Venice Biennale would be to say it's the single most important art event in the world. And to have Nepal represented there was a huge, huge milestone for Nepal and for the artist, for the curators, and for, I served as a commissioner with the Nepal Academy of Fine Arts. So it was a first for all of us. And we got noticed, and our Nepal pavilion was referred to as one of the must-see pavilions in the Venice Biennale. So I think the time is definitely right. To get permission to participate in the Venice Biennale has to come from the government. And I would like to share that it took me 9 months to get that permission, from going to the Foreign Ministry, to the Ministry of Culture. Chasing that dream was difficult. And 2 days before the permission deadline was up, we finally got permission. But that also meant that we lost the original larger space that our partners had identified, and we had to settle for something smaller. But yes, Nepali art has arrived, and we have to. I think it'll be easier 2 years from now when Nepal participates again.
Like Deepa said, our policy mechanism is a jalebi, right? So you have to keep going around in circles until we arrive at the right point. So, Mahima, you have worked with companies and individuals across the world, and just to, let's say, round up this session in terms of ideas, what do you think a successful global Nepali story will look like? Not just in terms of appeal, but also in terms of, let's say, what the contemporary youth, in terms of stories, ideas. How can Nepali content creators, creative artists tap into this global zeitgeist that is constantly changing or shaping itself new ways every day?
My personal opinion is that the first and most important thing we have to learn to do, which is to say, again, in my opinion, I don't think we have done very well so far, is to learn to be good stewards to our own heritage. To be able to tell the story of our heritage in many ways for a long time to come, we have to be good protectors of that heritage first. And I think that ties into what I think is the future of Nepal, or the Nepal story as a global story or a global brand. It ties into this issue of stewardship, because until we learn to appreciate our own heritage and where we are from, we will be unable to authentically communicate that to other people. So that's the first challenge that I see, that we are in the conversations around the world that have opened up about national identity, about the way gender is handled in countries, about erasure in art and in the national narratives of countries. Those dialogues have to be given more room in our maybe more public, more formal forums. That conversation is happening already, but we don't hear them loud enough. And this question, the blurb has this question about how do we tell a story of Nepal that is refreshing, that's current, that's authentic. And that first has to start with us being refreshingly honest with one another. So I think there's an enormous storytelling opportunity that has to come from authentic communication between us. And when you speak about the global zeitgeist, to me, that's what it is. We're all asking questions around the world about things that for decades, centuries maybe, we have believed to be true, about gender, about national identities, about race, and we're questioning those. And for me, when we talk about the story of the Lumbini Museum, I see this opportunity to be part of that zeitgeist of questions because historically, the story of Lumbini, we have leaned on the serenity angle of that story. And absolutely that has a place. But I want to also remind us that the questions that Siddhartha was asking in Lumbini, they were not mild, palatable, polite questions. They were questions that disrupted a family, a kingdom, and eventually much of the world. And so I would like our storytelling about Nepal to retain that urgency and the potency of something that's not just old, but is urgently relevant to today.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to the questions now. And on that terms of honesty, we have two honest questions and two honest questions which are specifically directed to two of our participants and two open-ended questions that any of the participants are open to take. So the first question that has been come to us is that it's very rosy to listen to the idea that Nepal is full of possibilities and we are all hospitable and all. But for an individual who wants to start entrepreneurship or work on an idea, it's not so simple, as we all know, as we've just been talking about that. So on a practical note, if a person from a remote part of Nepal has to create some sort of soft power or to tell their story, what can she do? Any of the participants, any of the panelists like to take this question? All right. Deepa ji.
I think that would be an extremely difficult venture. Being in a remote area in Nepal, maybe the internet is not that great. Even their training may not be that great. It's one thing to have great skills. You can be an artist, you can be an amazing artist, but how that translates commercially without losing its authenticity, it requires training. So that's what we focus on. We try to reach people from all over the country. We train them, but they do come here. We don't have a location in Jumla or Gorkha. They come here, and we have many, many artists from different parts of the country. And it takes a long time and a lot of investments, but that's something we're committed to. Because everything we do, Incessant Rain, as long as the company starts with an Incessant Rain, it's always focused on youth upliftment. And we try to reach beyond the borders of Kathmandu.
Upendra ji, I'm going to go for you for the tough question. What has NRN done to promote Nepali culture and arts, apart from politicization and parties?
First of all, we should know that I am from the village. I have no citizenship. I didn't take citizenship from the studio office. I am Nepali or not Nepali? I am Nepali. NRNs, not only those who are coming in October for the conference here and meeting with the political parties and all these events, most NRNs, millions of NRNs who are living abroad, they have the heart, feelings to the nation. I should do something for my nation in my own capacity and on my capability. So please don't confuse with the October events. In 24 months, in NRN, 2 months is very hard because these 2 months is election period and everybody is so excited. Even they are elected, after that 22 months they are not coming in meeting. So please don't be confused. NRNs are not only those people who are coming here and talking about the elections. NRNs are those who are living abroad but thinking about the nation. And they are doing everything about the social art, culture, our spirituality, tradition, language, film, books, everything they are doing. They don't talk about that too much in October conference, but they are doing there where they are living. And I one thing just want to add, now this 21st century is century of business, PCU. So everybody is talking about the finance, economy development. All the time we are so in hurry. And we used to say very good things about the person after his death. When he is alive, we are always criticizing him. But when he is dead, everybody is talking, oh, he was the great, that. So every Shok Sabha, this Sabha, that Sabha, we are doing. So what I am telling, Nepalese should not forget that our tradition, culture, sanskar is very rich, richest in the world. We should preserve, we should develop that, and only after that we should go for the economic development. Otherwise, it will be the mechanical development, and we will earn money, and after that we will cry, and with the big tears in eyes, oh, we lost that. So that I want to just say.
From NRNs to locals, Mahima, do you think the local population of Lumbini is doing enough to tell the Lumbini story themselves? And if not, what should they be doing? If they are, then how are they doing?
I mean, I see that slightly differently. I wonder whether we are doing enough for the local community, that is the living culture that houses this area that we care so much about. So for me, that's my orientation. That's what I wonder about. I wonder, you know, the Buddhist heritage of the Sacred Garden area is fundamentally different from much of the living heritage around Lumbini. And I think that's on us to also tell the story of the living heritage of the place, rather than treat these two as disconnected things.
Sangeeta ji, since you're the last one, let's ask you, this is a question that actually any of us can answer, but I'll go to you. Nepali artists, creators, and professionals have not been exposed much in the international market. We've not been able to adapt as well. In Fiverr and many other freelancing platforms, Nepalese are so few in number. However, there's a massive influx of number from neighboring countries. So what does the panel think needs to be done to have Nepali freelancers expose themselves to global competitive platforms? I suppose you can take it in terms of creators.
I would like to mention that the Kathmandu Triennale is a very rich training ground for the arts leaders, arts managers, for the technical crew, you know, those people who are putting on the show, all the on-ground sort of work that needs to be done to put on a Triennale. And for the Triennale, we have curators from all over the world who come. So when they come, they look at Nepali art. And I would like to share that whenever we've had the Triennale, you know, many of the artists who've shown, Nepali artists who've shown in the Triennale, have then been invited to show at the Sydney Biennale or the Yenchuan Biennale, to all these sort of, recently the Gropius Bao. You know, so they are being noticed, they are being acknowledged, and they're being picked up. But I also wanted to answer that earlier question, which was about the arts in, let's say, from the far west. Sadly, we have been very Kathmandu-centric about what we do. And I do acknowledge what Upendra ji is saying, that our culture is so diverse and so rich. This time for the Triennale, we were able to bring the Karnali Arts Center people, you know, people from the Janakpur Women's Development Center. And I think it is really our duty as Nepalis to support people in the, you know, in areas beyond Kathmandu. We need to recognize their talent. We need to bring them to Nepal, and we also need to take our expertise there. There has to be that sharing. We can't just hold everything in Kathmandu. We need to decentralize.
I think that goes partly in what Mahima was also talking about, Lumbini.
I just want to add for this person was from the remote area, the entrepreneur. If really you are entrepreneur, not just to say I am entrepreneur. If you are really entrepreneur in any remote area, please, we have courage and patience. Opportunity will come to you. You should not find somewhere. They will come to you. But you should have patience and courage.
I think on that inspiring message, we should end this. I think one of the takeaways, key takeaways from this session has been that we know that Nepal has this massive potential of soft power, but of course there are policy issues as well as other difficulties and challenges that we have to face. I suppose one of the things going ahead in the 21st century will be for us as a nation, as a policy unit, as a state, to assist in taking the Nepali story to global audiences and do it in a way that allows our creators, our artists, and our freelancers, as the question was, go forward and compete on the global stage. With that, I thank you. I thank my stellar panel. It was an incredible experience listening to all of you. Thank you, the audience, for these questions, and the Kantipur organization for holding.
Thank you very much. Nepal can and is a beautiful story of bravery, courage, culture, happiness, possibilities, and opportunities, and hope we're able to tell our stories and share the beauty of our nation for the entire world to see. Once again, thank you for this beautiful panel for discussing on how we can unleash Nepal's soft power. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come towards the end of day one of a fantastic Kantipur Conclave 2022. So on behalf of the organizers, I'd like to thank once again our keynotes, our panelists, our speakers, our moderators for the entire day where we talked about climate change, digital transformation, hydropower, Nepal and the world, and Nepal's soft power. It was wonderful listening to all our fantastic speakers who brought in a lot of valuable and valid insights. Once again, thank you to all our sponsors, title sponsor NIC Asia, powered by Asian Paints, hospitality partner Hyatt Regency, international airlines partner Cathay Pacific, education partner Uniglobe College, home appliance partner Haier, e-commerce partner Daraj, green mobility partner BYD, insurance partner Shikhar Insurance, and knowledge partner BEAD. A big thank you to all of your audience here as well. A big round of applause for yourself for being with us from the early morning on a Saturday to this wonderful evening that we're going to spend together. And to all the audience who've joined us virtually as well and participated in this conclave via Kantipur Television HD, Kantipur Cineplex HD, and e-Kantipur. See you all tomorrow at day 2 of Kantipur Conclave, Beyond Boundaries and Beyond Expectation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do join us for an inaugural dinner and have a fantastic evening ahead. This is Sidiksha signing off. Thank you, namaste, and good evening.
ब्याङ्क पनि साथी पनि राम्रो पनि
They say travel broadens the mind, but why stop there? Why not broaden the palette? Open your ears and your eyes. Your journey will take you many places, but here is where it all begins. The enhanced business class from Cathay Pacific. Let your senses guide you.
Vouchers, bank cards को फाइदा लुट्नुहोस्, डिस्काउन्ट माथि थप डिस्काउन्ट पाउनुहोस् केवल दराज दशैं धमाकामा। साथमा महा बम्पर उपहारमा न्यू इलेक्ट्रिक स्कुटर जित्ने मौका नछुटाउनुहोस्। Download the Daraz app now.
हायरको ह्याप्पी बायर। हायरको खरिदमा उपहार यस्तो दङ्ग भई रमाउँछ मन चङ्गा जस्तो। आफ्ना ग्राहक वर्गहरूका लागि हायरले ल्याएको छ दशैं, तिहार र छठको अवसरमा हात खाली नजाने कोसेली। थप जानकारीका लागि हायरको नजिकैको डिलरमा सम्पर्क गर्नुहोस्। हायर, इन्स्पायर्ड लिभिङ।
यो डाक्टर नवीनको सधैँ नयाँ चमकदार देखिने घर, जसको सबै छिमेकीले गुनासो मात्रै गर्छन्। कसैको नयाँ घर हेरेर घाँटी बाङ्गिएको गुनासो, नयाँ घरको चमकले ट्राफिक जामै भएको गुनासो, जसको जन्ती आए पनि नयाँ घरमै जाने गुनासो। सबै हैरान आए लिएर गुनासोको चाम।
छोरा जन्मिँदा घरमा एशियन पेन्ट्स अल्टिमा प्रोटेक्ट शाइन लगाएको त्यति नै हो।
एशियन पेन्ट्स अल्टिमा प्रोटेक्ट शाइन, यसमा भएको युभी हाइब्रिड टेक्नोलोजी